So I've got the master cylinder here, and I wanted to show you guys the rebuild kit I got for it. This piston is a larger diameter than most trucks. It's supposed to be. The large trucks have an 1.25 inch diameter for their internals, their piston and their inner bore, and a pickup has an 1.1 inch, so a pickup kit will not work. This kit is for a 1957 to 1960 or so Dodge D100 through 300 pickup with manual brakes, because when they gave you manual brakes on those, they gave you a master cylinder with a larger bore in order to account for the fact that you didn't have a brake booster. So this is what you need for these. So I've cleaned up the original shaft and boot and everything, so that can be used. I'm going to use the new spring and seals, of course. The seals are why I needed the new kit. This valve comes with it. And then once I paint this, I'll put them all together inside, and hopefully it'll work just fine on the truck. It's now the next day, and I've painted the master cylinder as well as the pedal parts that go with it, and now I'm reassembling it here on the train layout. And I've discovered that the piston that comes in the kit will not work with it because it's got a hollow center, and with the Chevy setup, this either doesn't reach and or just presses through the middle, which is no good. So I took the rubber seal off of the end of this and popped it onto the old piston, which I've cleaned up on the wire wheel. And it should work perfectly. That seal is really nice. Here's the new snap ring holding in the washer that's attached to the shaft here. The old one had 3 points and this one has 4, so hopefully it'll be even more secure. Not that the old one had an issue, it's just awesome to have more points of contact. Looking at it from the other end now, with the threads for the end cap to screw in, you can see the piston in there, and the end with the 6 tiny holes around the edge of it is supposed to point this way. Then the main seal goes in after it, cupped this way to hold the spring. Then the spring, you take the end with something attached to the end. The original had a little metal piece, and this one's plastic, but this I think would be better because that way the brake fluid can't corrode the metal bit. That goes in there. This spring is slightly longer and tighter, so it's going to be trickier than if I were putting the old one in, but it's going to be stronger. Then you take the valve. I recycled the old copper sealing ring from the original set of parts because the one that's included in the kit is too wide and would have to be cut to this size anyway. That sits like this in relation to that, and then that just sits flat on top of this. And I did have to cut this rubber seal to go around this. The diameter was not wide enough to fit over the top, but now it fits perfectly. I now have it as together as I can get it right now. This end piece is screwed on tight. Most of the pedal is on. This piece waits to go on until it's in the cab because this is the part that sticks through. It's got a tapered bit and some knurling. Then I still need to put the keeper on right here, but where it pivots is in, just missing the grease zerk, and then this is all put in tight. So now I can move on to the next thing. I now have the front wheel cylinders from that truck here on the workbench, and after a lot of hammering, I've managed to get them apart. This is the second one. They're both pretty good on the inside, and this one's pieces sure came out a lot more intact. Here's the center spring and its end bits. One of the rubber cups, the other one fell completely apart. And then the pistons themselves. There's the bleeder. This one, as you can see, the spring got a little bit mangled and crushed in the process of removing it. Here's the bits of its end pieces. Both rubber pieces, the middle blew out, and I had to pick them out the rest of the way with a little screwdriver. And then this piston came out all right. This one now has a hole in it. But none of that matters too much now, because as I said, both of them are pretty good on the inside, and multiple brands have their own rebuild kits for them. Now these are the older design where it comes straight out, but if you look up the newer design for 1960 to 1989, if you have your original cylinders, that's great. You can rebuild them with the parts for the newer ones, or the newer ones will work just as fine in these ones instead. The only difference is, instead of this piece coming straight out, there's a left and a right, and one goes to one direction and one goes on the other angle. So after messing around with that boat tank a little bit and rigging it up so that this truck can finally idle off of its fuel, I managed to limp it up here on about 4 cylinders or so. Definitely not all 8 at the very least. And it had plenty of power and it wasn't making any weird noises, but I decided to check on the spark plugs to make it run nicer, and cylinder number 4 had this surprise for me. It was not like that when I put it all together and checked it over to make it run, but I think there may be some pieces going on in there. Luckily, I've got this Harbor Freight bore scope, which actually works pretty good. So I was able to stick that up into the spark plug hole there next to the exhaust manifold. So if we stick the camera in there, we can find that piston is very exploded, and I believe the culprit is that valve right there. So as far as we can tell, this truck last worked in the 1970s or 80s as a grain truck. This bed is from the 1950s. And it's got hydraulics. It's got a hydraulic lift for the main bed, and then this control scheme to run a trailer behind it that also has hydraulics. So it was hauling as much grain as could fit in this box, plus whatever trailer they were pulling behind it. And these trucks aren't geared super high so that they can pull loads like that. That part is fine, but it makes them go kind of slow. So I'm imagining that some hired hand on that farm, or maybe the farmer himself who just didn't know, over-revved it in a low gear trying to get from the farm to the elevator a little faster, and either floated the valves or broke a keeper and exploded that piston. I just put that new orange water pump on there yesterday, and I was gonna get it all buttoned up and nice, but now I'm gonna pull the radiator and then pull the engine with my dad. And I might rebuild this one and put it back in, or I might take that 261 out of the 1956 6100 that we brought home in a recent video, and I might run that in this, because that would be really cool. Either way, I'm about to have a lot of fun and learn a lot about rebuilding engines and swapping things around. So I suppose we'll find out if the next video is going to be an engine swap or a rebuild video. Stay tuned. Bye.